What's up, squad? It's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I wanted to touch on this story of South Africa filing a case of genocide against Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip at the United Nations ICJ, otherwise known as the International Court of Justice. This case resolves around South Africa claiming that Israel, in part or in whole, is seeking to eliminate the Palestinian people. And this is a really, really tough case to bring because Israel right now has so much support coming from the US, which is a major uh, we'll say a major player on the world stage in the UN. A lot of functions, positions, infrastructure is supported by the US backing. In fact, a similar case was brought against Russia in their invasion of Ukraine, which proved to be successful. But of course, the Russians did not necessarily abide, and the war in Ukraine continues. So now you have the flip side of this, where it's not a enemy of the U.S. as in Russia or antagonist as in Russia, but you have an ally of the U.S. in Israel that is being accused of this. So of course Israel blatantly dismissed this accusation of genocide. It says it's merely protecting its people, which as a nation it has the right to do. I wanted to bring up this story for two primary reasons. One is I told you guys, Africa has a place in this world. Every continent's people have a place in this world. And lack of development prevents this voice from this place of being heard. It wasn't some major power. It wasn't the UK. It wasn't India. It wasn't China, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. None of these countries, which is far more vested in this region, that brought this case of genocide, that said the G word out loud in a public forum where this dispute belongs. It was an African nation that did that. And of course, South Africa, suffering under apartheid for decades, is coming from a moral place of the oppression of one's own people. South Africa's story was slightly different in regards to it was their relationship with the white supremacy that was exercised inside the country in the caste system of apartheid, which many Africans fought against. This situation, of course, is religious, political, as well as racial. That is going on in Israel. But it is the conscience of the African mind that has brought this case against Israel, not other countries, far more powerful or far more closer to the action that did so. It was South Africa. And this is why it is important because people hear more when you spend more. And as Africa develops and has a bigger play on the world stage, they can be the other voice in the room. The moral righteousness is not a monopoly held by the rest, and it shouldn't be. But unfortunately, a lot of these institutions are supported by the West. So what the West says is moral is considered moral and therefore just. And what you see here is South Africa not sitting out there waving a flag saying we are the leaders of the global south, such as China, ridiculously China and India try to purport themselves to be. But you actually have a member of the global south in South Africa standing out there, not necessarily with the most backing per se, a lot of vocal dissent around what's going on in Israel, but formally there's not. Israel's trade is still going. You have the Houthis shooting at ships going to Israel, but outside of that, it's a lot of vocal support to get the violence in Gaza to stop. But actual support, sanctions, trades, troops, etc., you're not seeing that come from the global arena. It was an African country that brought this resolution to the International Court of Justice. The second point I want to raise is, what is justice? And what we like to believe in any society, any civil society, is justice is the balancing of the scales, the correcting of prior wrongs with current and future rights. There is a balance in that we are a moral people. We are a people that seek to nullify wrongdoings. This is what justice is meant to do. It's supposed to be the glue that keeps civil society together. Because as far as we trust in a just society, we believe the society is fair and we do not seek to rebel against the society. What history and actuality displays for us, and in as much as justice is about fairness, it is also about, or it can be a reflection of dictations of authority. What do I mean by this? In the case of equals, can there be fairness? If you have a situation, let's say the U.S. Civil War, the North believed one thing, the South believed another thing. The South did not recognize the suzerainty of the North on the South. The South believed that the North didn't have the right to impose its will on itself. That resulted in a civil war because you had two equals. You had two united governments going at each other. When you see justice such as Nuremberg, the Nazis lost. It was the victors that said they were guilty. It wasn't the Nazis themselves. It was the Germans put in place by the Western victors that called the Nazis criminals. But did the Nazis try themselves on those crimes? No, they were victims of the dictation of authoritarian figure. And I think this is the real question. What is genocide? Can we say that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is, and the onslaught of 20,000 Palestinians in Gaza Strip isn't? And the reason why it wouldn't be, right, is because of Israel's connections. That's the only thing stopping it. What other part of the world could we see this go on playing out on our TV screens? And no one says a crime is occurring here. And the reason why they're saying a crime is not occurring there is because they're defending Israel's right. So the question is, what is the UN going to say when it comes to this point of fairness? So I'm really going to be interested in that, because is there some type of fairness in the world that a country can expect? But if there's not a universal concept of fairness, then why should Israel abide by it? Israel's primary purpose, if justice is based on authoritarian dictate, shouldn't Israel seek to be the strongest nation it can be to absolve himself or any perceived wrongdoings? Because if they're strong enough, no one can dictate to them. So this is going to be interesting how it plays out on a world stage. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Comment below. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.